Brian Mazik of the Fight Guys, and I'm also a Forbes contributor. And we are here talking about Vasiliy Lomachenko's victory over Luke Campbell tonight. It's tonight in London, but late afternoon, early evening in the United States. Vasiliy Lomachenko got the unanimous decision victory. The win was actually not it wasn't quite as lopsided as the scores would suggest. Now, I don't say that to say that the 118 to 109, and I believe it was like 119 to 1 something, 119 to 110, something to that effect. It was pretty wide, but the fight was actually closer, I would say, than the scores indicate. But I don't feel like that was the scores were a problem. I don't think that they shortchanged Luke Campbell. He was very competitive, but there were a lot of really close rounds. I actually scored the fight 118 to 109. If you check out Peter Kahn, my fellow fight guy, if you check out his live blog on Forbes, he scored it the same way. But we both felt that there were a lot of really close rounds that could have gone either way. Most of those rounds, those close ones, most of them I gave to Lomachenko because of his activity. The jab, I felt, was a really good weapon for him. He used the up jab that consistently snapped Luke Campbell's head back. But I say all that, and I have to give absolute props to Luke Campbell, who really fought an excellent fight. He was fundamentally sound. He was balanced throughout. He did some great work to Lomachenko's body. I felt that he buzzed him in the first round. I think he also buzzed him in the seventh round. And in the seventh round, when he buzzed Lomachenko felt it. It was 2 shots to the head, but Lomachenko was able to gather himself and then come on really strong at the end of that round and arguably took it back. I think on most of the judges' scorecards, he took it back. I actually gave it to Campbell. I felt that he'd done enough with buzzing Lomachenko early in that round to keep it, but I acknowledge it could have gone either way. Also, in the fifth round I felt was like a fairly big turning point in the round because Lomachenko hurt Campbell to the body, which ultimately I felt was the difference in the fight, the body work. He hurt Campbell to the body and followed through, kept putting on that pressure, banging the body, and it happened late in the round. Had it happened earlier in the round, I gotta believe that this fight ends up stopped at that point, or at the very least, Campbell goes down. Now, he wasn't as fortunate in the 11th because Lomachenko was able to hurt him to the body again earlier in the fight, earlier in the round. And ultimately, he just poured it down on until Luke Campbell had no other choice but to take a knee. I mean, the dude showed he showed ridiculous toughness through this fight because I'm convinced that some of the body shots that Campbell took, if he had taken those bodies, if most other fighters had taken those same body shots, I don't believe that they continue. I believe they take a knee, or they would have taken more than one knee for sure. Lomachenko's accuracy on the inside is just phenomenal, right? So without a question, I do believe that Lomachenko won the fight. But there's some interesting dialogue kind of floating around the boxing community right now. Everybody is pretty much, very much, I would say, consensus. They're giving Luke Campbell his credit for the effort that he put in and how well he fought, and they're also showing a lot of admiration for Lomachenko, which I think is obviously is in order. But I'm hearing a lot of people saying, and these are people that are respected. These are not just people just giving random crazy opinions. I'm hearing a lot of people say that it looks like Lomachenko is having some issues with the size as he continues to go up in weight. Obviously, he is now, though, the WBC, WBO, and the WBA lightweight champion. This is now his fourth weight class. But I'm gonna say this particular fight appeared to me to create it looked to me as if he struggled with size of an opponent more today than I've seen him ever struggle with size of an opponent in his 14 fight career. Luke Campbell's length and just mostly the length, but it wasn't just his length because I mean, I think there could have been another fighter, Luke Campbell's height, who maybe didn't utilize his length as well. But if you combine Luke Campbell's length with his fundamentals, I think that's what gave Lomachenko some issues here and there. Now, obviously, we're looking at the scorecards. And if you didn't see the fight, you might be like 118 to 109 by two judges. Where was the problems? Well, if you saw the fight, you saw that this was a more labored effort from Lomachenko than you probably have ever seen. Obviously, honestly, I almost want to say he looked like he had more trouble in this fight than he had against Linares, and he got dropped against Linares. So I don't know. I thought it was a tough, hard fought bout. Definitely felt like the right person got the decision. Luke Campbell doesn't, you hear this all the time when somebody loses a fight. And it's probably a pretty empty compliment. But Luke Campbell really, honestly, has nothing to be ashamed of losing this particular fight against this opponent, who, in my opinion, is the best fight, pound for pound fighter in the world. I'm convinced at this point that Lomachenko is the best fighter in the world. Naoya Inoue is right up there. Obviously, Terrence Crawford is in the conversation, and Errol Spence and Canelo, of course, too. But when you consider who Lomachenko has fought in such a short period of time, the amount of titles that he's accumulated in that short period of time, I mean, man, it's hard for me to point somebody else out. I know there's other guys with more experience, professional experience. There's guys with more gaudy records and that sort of thing. But when you look at the fighters that Loma has run through in such a short period of time, man, I don't know who has a more impressive resume when you consider recency. And when you consider the fact that his only loss is in his second professional fight against Orlando Salido, who is absolutely not a pushover. And I think most people believe if that fight was to happen, had happened again, like in the next 6 months, or if it was even a 15-round fight, I think Lomachenko probably wins. But because of who Loma is, man, Luke Campbell has nothing to be ashamed of. I mean, he gave a great effort. He had success against a guy who made Guillermo Rigondeaux quit, against a guy who made Nicholas Walters quit when Nicholas Walters looked like he was the boogeyman of his division. A guy who beat Gary Russell Jr. I mean, we're talking about a truly, truly elite fighter, man. In Lomachenko, like this is, and when I'm saying elite, I'm not talking about, oh, he's the best, one of the best fighters fighting right now. This guy, to me, looks like an all-time great. And it's not just, oh, he's got this fancy footwork. It's not just that, oh, he's got some sharp shots. And it's not just that. It's the chin. It's the desire to mix it up and still stay safe while in punching range. Is all of those things. And man, I'm telling you, the guy is insane. Danilo Scar pops in. He says, why isn't Pac-Man in the conversation for pound for pound? You said anymore. He does have a world title. The reason being is not just because of the world titles for me, right? When I look at it, I say from a pound for pound standpoint, are there fighters that, like, for me, I think that there are at least two fighters that as much as I love Pacquiao is actually like my favorite fighter. But as much as I love him at this point, I don't think he can beat Errol Spence. And I don't think he can beat Terrence Crawford. Now, I didn't think he could beat Keith Thurman either. But I'm even more slanted thinking that he can't beat Terrence Crawford or Errol Spence, especially Errol Spence. Errol Spence I just think it's way too big, right? Now, if we're talking about Pacquiao at a different point of his career and at a different weight class, and those guys are in that weight class, that'll be different. But in his own weight class right now, I think those are two fights that I just don't know that he wins. I'm interested in what happens if he does get Danny Garcia. But for me, that's why I wouldn't put him necessarily in that conversation. Now, Pacquiao's in a much bigger conversation to me. I think he is an all-time great fighter overall, period. I think he's had a better career than all of those guys together. He's had a better career. But we're talking, when I say pound for pound, I'm talking about right now, 40-year-old Manny Pacquiao 40-year-old Manny Pacquiao, comparing him to 31-year-old Vasiliy Lomachenko, 30-year-old Terence Crawford, was it 28-year-old Errol Spence? I just don't think that he is still at that place. But if for me, I don't see that as a disrespectful thing. I just see that as looking at it objectively and considering all things. Now, what I felt was interesting is after the fight, right? So Lomachenko has made it very clear that he wants to unify the lightweight titles. And the path to unification now for him, the last path is through the IBF title against Richard Comey, if Richard Comey still is the champion. In December, I believe it is, Richard Comey is going to defend his title against a guy that we interviewed on the channel. We also interviewed Richard Comey, is Teofimo Lopez. Outstanding young prospects, very young, not as quite as experienced as some of the other fighters, but he talent-wise, I think everybody knows Teofimo is a special guy. Didn't look fantastic in his last fight, but if you follow boxing for as long as I have, going on 40 years at this point, you know that great fighters don't always look great. Doesn't mean they're not great. And I'm not calling Teofimo great. I'm just saying looking bad in one fight, especially against a relatively awkward opponent, doesn't completely kill their vibe, right? So Teofimo has an opportunity to become the fighter that many people think that he'll be. But what I felt was interesting is Lomachenko says, I want Teofimo Lopez next. That's the guy I want. And obviously, I think he wants him because Teofimo has called him out. Teofimo has more of an in-your-face type of personality that clearly contrasts or contradicts with Lomachenko's whole style. So Lomachenko says that's who he wants. But funny thing is he said, I don't think he's going to beat Comey. Now, is that gamesmanship? And he's trying to already start the mind games, getting to Teofimo Lopez's head, or does he truly not believe that? Now, Comey is a fantastic fighter. He has a great jab. He's a much more powerful puncher, I think, than people give him credit for. Comes from a fantastic boxing tradition when Accra, Ghana. There's been champions from there all over the place, most notably Azuma Nelson. So Comey's a heck of a fighter. So I think that's a great fight. Clearly, I think it's the toughest opponent that Teofimo Lopez has ever had. And it's probably the toughest opponent that Comey's had, even though he's had some solid fights. So the winner of that fight getting Lomachenko sometime perhaps in the spring of 2020, that is, if you're a real hardcore boxing fan, that is that the thought of that is amazing. So I think things are really exciting for the lightweight division. And I'm gonna tell you something. I'm gonna make a point about Lomachenko. Lomachenko he's in an ideal situation. I want to say it's a more ideal situation than I think anybody in the sport, right? And I'm going to tell you why I say that. And this is especially if he decides to stay at lightweight, right? Lomachenko is an elite fighter from a skill standpoint. I don't think that anybody can really reasonably dispute that. He's also hungry for championships and hungry to put on not winning crowd-pleasing performances, which will increase his earning potential because people want to see him fight, right? But third, see, there's fighters out there who have those two things. But the third thing, which is actually beyond his control that he has, is he has access to the opponents without a bunch of ridiculous politics as it pertains to networks and promoters. He's fortunate enough to be fighting in a weight class at 135, which obviously this isn't his original weight class. He's a featherweight, super featherweight. But he's fighting in a weight class right now where all of the champions are within his reach to face. And they're all good enough fighters. Well, I mean, he's got 3 of the 4 belts now, but they're all good enough fighters. They were good enough fighters for him to really raise his status level with victories. So, I mean, you got Linares and you got Luke Campbell now, and now you got the winner of Comey and Lopez. These are all fights that when you look at his resume, which is already an impressive resume. I mean, you just look at this. Jose Pedraza, Anthony Crowler, Jorge Linares, Guillermo Ragondial, Miguel Mariaga, Jason Sosa, Nicholas Walters, Roman Rocky Martinez, Romulo Koasicha, Gamalier Rodriguez, Gary Russell Jr., Orlando Salido. I mean, he's fought great fighters. I don't know how much stock you guys put in to BoxRec, right? A lot of people have some issues or whatever with BoxRec. I don't think it's a perfect formula, but I do think it's the best one we got out here right now for kind of evaluating fighters across the board, right? Definitely not perfect. But if you look at it, of Lomachenko's last, what is this, 5, 6, 7, 8 opponents, 7 of the last 8 opponents that he's faced have been ranked as 5-star talents on BoxRec. I don't know. I don't know who else that you can look at across their last 8 fights, and 7 of the last 8 opponents have been considered 5-star opponents, and that was a 5-star fight before the fight. Because the way that star system works, it kind of depends on how competitive they're saying the fight is going to be ultimately. That's a heck of a statement, man. That is a heck of a statement. For anybody who didn't get an opportunity to see the fight, I do have a few snapshots. Just not like seeing the fight, of course, but you kind of get an opportunity to see kind of what they look like in the ring, some of the range things that were going on. 2 southpaws going at it. Luke Campbell was able to land that left hook a little bit. That's kind of where some of his better shots came from. But as I said, the body work. It was the body work by Lomachenko, getting inside that jab, getting inside Luke Campbell's length, and landing some power shots that ultimately I felt broke Campbell down. This digging shot to the body. Now, you might be saying this shot is a little low. If you saw the fight, you know it wasn't really low. Luke Campbell's shorts were really high for this fight, and the referee made that known early in the fight that they were going to give the belt line because Campbell's shorts were pretty high. And this is the 11th round when he was just wearing Campbell down, and he ultimately had to take the knee before the end of the round. And I mean, honestly, if you look at the scorecards, the fight was pretty much done at that point anyway. Lomachenko's lead was way too big, but when he went down, you knew that it was all over. So after watching Campbell, though, after watching him, I would have to say, man, I think he'd have a great chance to beat just about every other lightweight in the world, man. Luke Campbell, Teofimo Lopez is a great fight. Luke Campbell, Richard Comey's a great fight. I mean, you name it, man. Luke Campbell, whoever, I think is a pretty good fight. This guy really impressed me in a fight against literally one of the best fighters in the world, one of the best fighters. I mean, I feel the best fighter in the world, and one of the best I've seen in the last 25 years. I'd go that far. I really would go that far. What's going on, Sean Singletary? I want to hear you guys' comments, though. What did you think about the fight? Did you think the scorecards were too wide? Did you think it was on point? What was your thoughts on Luke Campbell? What's your thoughts on Lomachenko? Does it look like lightweight is too heavy for him ultimately? Who do you think he matches up with better? Does he match up better against Comey? Does he match up better against Teofimo Lopez? Which one of those fights excites you the most? I'm not gonna lie. Seeing Lomachenko, Teofimo Lopez that's the one. That's the one. I think the hype for that fight will be great. I think ESPN goes all out for that one, and it's not common to see, the major networks and the promoters go all out for a 135-pound fight. That's not common. So you're going to be seeing something potentially special. So I think ESPN is probably rooting for Teofimo Lopez to beat Comey. It's not going to be easy because Comey's no joke. But I think they got to be rooting for Lopez because, I mean, for anybody who's not familiar with Teofimo Lopez, but you do kind of pay attention to boxing, a few years back, he knocked the guy out and did a Fortnite dance. And did a Fortnite dance in the ring. He did have a kind of controversial knockout when he knocked out, I believe it was Jesse Magdaleno, and he kind of stood over him after he was punishing him. Diego Magdaleno didn't like it very much and kind of came at him. But it was he's a headline guy. He definitely is a headline guy waiting to happen. Retro Boxing and Documentaries, I appreciate you coming through. He said Luke did well, but yeah, I like the Lopez fight. Absolutely. Lopez fight is the one. Dennis Bardway, I hope I said that right. Say, yes, I also have strong belief Loma is the real deal. Yeah, man. Yeah, man. I mean, I'm telling you, if after beating the people that he's beaten, if you still are doubting Vasiliy Lomachenko, I think you just got a personal issue with Vasiliy Lomachenko because I mean, he's fighting people the way pretty much all boxing fans want to see people fight, that want to see the champions fight the top contenders. That's how he's fighting people. He's taking them all. He's like, okay, you. He's collecting championships. And I think it was weird because before the fight tonight, Mark Kriegel had a little, promo or vignette where he was talking about Lomachenko, and then he was talking about he was really giving the reality of the governing bodies. He's right. They take 3% of the fighter's purse. But I thought the whole thing kind of didn't give Lomachenko enough credit for actually putting some stock and value on the titles. Many fighters, I remember I interviewed Adrian Broner once, and he flat told me, he said, man, titles don't matter nothing. It's about how popular you are. And he was right. He was right. He was absolutely right. But that's one of the things that sucks about boxing right now is that, fighters are not putting any value on the titles. And now here you got a guy who is an elite level talent and beating everybody. And he actually is saying, I care about the titles. And one of the reasons why I think he's doing that, he kind of talked about it a little bit, or someone quoted him a little bit at the end of this particular fight. He said, I can't depend, essentially, this is what he said, I'm paraphrasing. I can't depend on showing you who I am with my speech because I don't speak English well enough, right? Now, the second part to me, I think, is where he goes or where he turns to because of that. Because he can't sell himself that way, and maybe this is not even in his nature, but because he can't sell himself that way, where he's building his status and where he's building his approval at is that I'm gonna beat everybody. I'm not only gonna beat them, I'm gonna fight, and I'm gonna take risk. I'm gonna go up in weight class. I'm gonna challenge champions from all these different spots. Man, I mean, I almost feel like I'm standing in the middle of Gladiator and I'm Russell Crowe, and I'm like, are you not entertained? What else are you asking for from a fighter, a champion? So I'm all in. I'm all in on Lomachenko, man. I do agree with some people that it does appear that the size could be getting to him, especially if you're big as Campbell and you have the kind of skills that Campbell has. Now, I'm not, Tiafimo's a big lightweight too. He's a big lightweight, just not even just in height, but just in size. And Tiafimo's just an inch shorter than Luke Campbell. So that one's a little scary, right? That one's a little scary. And Richard Comey is the type of fighter who fights tall anyway, because he uses his jab, he uses his length, and he's also 5'8". So it's a little bit taller than Lomachenko. They list Lomachenko at 5'7", but I'm going to tell you, either he's not 5'7" or Luke Campbell's not 5'9", because there's no way in the world there was only a 2-inch height difference. When you saw those guys standing at the press conference for the face-off, it looked like Luke Campbell was a whole head taller than Lomachenko. So I don't know. Maybe the size is the issue. But Sean Singletary says, I thought the cards were off a bit, but the right guy won. I had it a tad closer. Lomachenko versus Lopez would be incredible. I mean, I think it could go either way with the cards. I really do. Because there were a lot of close rounds. And whenever you have a lot of close rounds, it can go, like you said, it can go either way. This is why I feel like there's a flaw in the overall scoring system, period. Take, for instance, the round where I think it was the 5th round. Lomachenko hits Campbell to the body, clearly hurts him. Clearly, you can tell that if there's 20 seconds, 30 seconds more left in the round, Campbell's going to have to go down, take a knee, maybe even get stopped. Well, he didn't knock him down, and the blitz wasn't so emphatic that you'd have to call it a 10-8 round. So it's a 10-9 round. So now the next round comes up, and I'm not saying this happened, but I'm setting an example. The next round comes up, and Campbell controls the round, wins it, but it's close. Doesn't badly hurt Lomachenko at all, but he, throws a jab out there, maybe lands a left hook to the body, but Lomachenko doesn't have nearly the reaction that Campbell had in the fifth. Well, that's also a 10-9 round. Now, but if I step back and you show me just those two rounds and you ask me who's winning the fight, I'm from my eyes, I'm going to tell you, oh, it looked Lomachenko's win. He almost stopped them in the fifth round. But score-wise, they're both 10-9 rounds. And I think that is the flaw in scoring, especially in boxing, but it's also in MMA as well. I think that there should be a scale there. You can stay with the 10-point must system, but every round that is won that doesn't include a knockdown or a standing 8 count doesn't need to be judged as a 10-9. If the round where Lomachenko hurt Campbell but didn't drop him, if that was a 10-8 round, and then a round where Campbell won but didn't have a dominant presence over Lomachenko, if that's then a 10-9, then now we're running even, because now that properly represents Lomachenko's dominance and that he won his round by more than Campbell. And then it can also be vice versa if that was the case. But I think that type of adjustment would help what we see with our eyes match up much better with the scoring. But those close rounds are the ones that create those situations where people scream robbery, or where we say the cards were wider than we thought than they should have been. It's the close rounds that create those situations. I think a lot of people don't realize that. They watch a fight and they don't even score it, and they kind of just watch it and they take in what they think how close was the fight, who won what, and they don't score it. And that's why a lot of times you'll see fans go on social media after fight, oh, this is some trash. My first question always is, did you score it? Because if you didn't score it, then it's very possible your assessment could be off based off of the way the scoring system works. So that's always interesting to me. But Sean says Brian Campbell had a hell of a showing, given how badly he was hurt on a few occasions. Absolutely. Give him all the credit in the world for that. He also said, Brian, did you catch the earlier title fight where Julio Cesar Martinez threw that blatantly illegal body shot? Man, there was a lot of Campbell was fighting a little roughhousing himself. But no, I didn't see the Martinez fight. I'll have to go back and try to get a replay on the ESPN Plus thing. I think they allow you to watch it after it goes live. But no, I missed that. But I did see that double leg takedown that Campbell gave Lomachenko in the 12th round to keep from going down a second time, which I think really wiped out wiped out any chance that he had, or pretty much showed that Lomachenko had run away with the fight. But entertaining. If I was to describe the fight tonight, that's how I would describe it. I would describe it as entertaining. So Nate says he doesn't think Loma looked good in this fight. I'm interested in knowing what you mean by look good. When you say look good, do you think that he doesn't look as dominant as he has looked in the past? Did you see a ton of flaws that you think that he hadn't shown before? I think a lot of what you saw. What's going on, 78 Sports? I appreciate you coming through, bro. Absolutely, man. You actually don't you probably don't realize, man. I know I'm writing for a publication and all that, and may seem to have a some level of a connection, but I check you out, bro. I check you out. I check your channel out. I believe I am subscribed on one of these YouTube channels, and I check you out. I give you all the respect in the world, man. Y'all want to talk about American dreams? You want to look at 78 Sports, and if you somewhere right now and you have something that you want to do on YouTube, and you thinking that you have to have this huge, crazy promotion, and you got to have 19 cameras going along to be successful, man, my man 78 Sports does nothing but get on the mic, talk about the sport, and give his opinion, and he gives it decisively, and he gives it in a way that is entertaining. And I ain't gonna give out his amount of followers. I'll let y'all click on the link to his name to see that. But he's successful, and I'll tell you right now, bro, you inspire me. So I appreciate you coming through and showing me some love. Uh, Christian Maroda, how you doing? I appreciate you coming through. Hopefully, you guys are liking the video and subscribing and sharing it. I definitely would be appreciated. But Nate, yeah, I want to know what you mean by that, bro. You said that you don't think he looked good. Um, See, to me, it's all not, you know, I don't expect for Lomachenko to dominate every fighter he fight faces the way he dominated Anthony Crowler. Crowler's not as good a fighter as Luke Campbell. It's really just is I mean, no disrespect to Anthony Crowler, but I think that what we saw from Lomachenko tonight was because he was in there with a really good fighter who probably gives every 135 a hard fight or beats them. And I think that's what we saw tonight. I think so. I don't know. I thought he looked good because he took shots. Because I don't care who you are. I think sometimes that's what happens. I think with fighters as great as Lomachenko, like Roy Jones and Pernell Whitaker, Floyd Mayweather, guys like that who have that type of elite level skill and athleticism. We're so used to them going through fights where they just, you know, to quote Roy Jones, can't be touched, can't be. I mean, everything is just so they make it look so easy. When we see them in a fight, sometimes we give the guy who gave them the fight a little bit too much credit. I don't know, maybe I'm doing that with Luke Campbell right now. But then we also, I think we are harder on the elite level fighter because we're so used to seeing them dominate without even being challenged. And I think tonight we saw Lomachenko get challenged, but to me, he looked good because he got challenged by a good fighter and answered. I think that's why he looked good. That's to me, that defines why he looked good. Toby and Norris says Tank Sparks Lomachenko. Wouldn't say Loma is slipping, but I definitely say that the film on him shows that he is very beatable. I think everybody's beatable, and I wouldn't ever say that Gervonta couldn't beat him. Gervonta is a heck of an athlete, and he is a boxer who I still think is on the uprise, and he can crack. Like Gervonta can crack for real, crack. But what we don't know is if Gervonta steps up out of super featherweight and fights at lightweight, whether or not he's going to be the same guy if he carries the punch up. That part we don't know. We don't know if they do meet, what weight class they would meet at. And I also say this: Lomachenko at super featherweight didn't look like he had any didn't look like he had much of many weaknesses. I think we're seeing that he has more weakness, or it appears that that's popping out more now at fighting at 135, which is two weight classes or so above what you might say is his natural weight. So I don't say Lomachenko absolutely beats Gervonta because Gervonta has hand speed and he can pop. I'm talking he can pop. So and we've seen guys touch Lomachenko. We saw Linares drop him. I don't think he was hurt, but we saw him drop him. What happens if Tank pops him? He might go away. He might go away because Tank can crack. But we don't know what that looks like at 135, and we don't know whether or not Lomachenko can still get it done at super featherweight. Sometimes as a fighter starts to get older, and he moves up and then tries to move back down, he's not the same when he comes back down. So that part we don't know yet, but there's a lot of ifs there. Tank's also from a height standpoint, I don't know how well Tank carries 135 at 5'5", 5'6". I just don't know how well he carries that. I think super featherweight is that's his jam, right? That's his thing. And you know, I don't know. I don't know how well he carries that. It's difficult for me to see a smaller guy beating Lomachenko at the current level that he's at now. The reach is an issue. His footwork is already fantastic. His speed and accuracy is already fantastic. And now you got the opponent having to make up for a length disadvantage. I mean, Lomachenko is a good two inches taller, maybe an inch and a half at least taller than Gervonta. And Gervonta doesn't have the longest arms. His reach isn't fantastic. Gervonta's reach is listed as 67 and a half, but Lomachenko's is shorter than that, 65 and a half, 66. But I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know about that. I mean, it's fight I'd love to see. Love to see. Both of them have, I think, a path to victory for sure, which is what makes a fight great. Tobian says, is it to buy? It's probably to buy-in. He said, let's change that. Let's say that adjustments have been made, kind of like a rookie QB in his second season. After film is available, guys are adjusting. I 100% agree with that, but I also think we can't neglect or you can't ignore the fact that he's moved up, and moving up creates weaknesses in itself because now you're fighting guys who are naturally bigger. But so I think I do agree with what you're saying to some level, because anytime you're great, right? Anytime you come out, you're nearly undefeated, you're mowing people down, and guys are calling you pound for pound the best. You're everybody's Super Bowl. You're everybody's Super Bowl. You're everybody's major payday. You're the guy everybody's preparing for. You're the guy Teofimo Lopez is calling it out. So it's you become you just become that guy, and so you get everybody's best. You get everybody's best, and I think that actually lends itself to your point. People are adjusting. Guys are setting their entire what's going on, Ness Mendoza. That's the mayor of the fight guys right there. You know it's fight o'clock somewhere when Ness shows up. But I think that's what you're getting, man. You're getting people looking at him, and you had a really good analogy with the rookie QB comment, because it's going to, like, people had tape on Patrick Mahomes last year. They did, which he wasn't a rookie, but they had tape on him last year, first full year as a starter with the Chiefs. But now this year, there's going to be even more game planning every time somebody plays the Chiefs. Lomachenko goes through that same thing now when people fight him, because they're like, man, all right, you can't let him do this. You can't let him do this. The little pivot that he does, you can't let him do that. The entry that he shows, the way he shows the up jab, you got to be able to slip that. You got to be able to counter the right hand that might follow that in case he feints it and just throws it out there for show. You got trainers who are getting fighters together to fight Lomachenko. They're giving them this type of script. They are. I think that pays homage really to Lomachenko. I think that shows how fantastic he is, because you got people literally setting everything up for you. Another sports analogy: Golden State Warriors dominated the NBA for 6 years or so. They got the entire NBA literally trying to pattern their entire teams after their style, because we always hear people say it's a copycat league. No, sports are just a copycat industry, or they're at least an industry where you look at who's winning, who's dominant, and you try to pattern what you do around that or against that. And that's what I think you're seeing, like you were saying, Tobian, is that people are adjusting, and that's why Lomachenko's getting better fights. But I also think that that's also even further establishing why he's great, because people are game planning, and these are high level guys game planning, and he's still winning. And he's not just eking by. Like, Luke Campbell gave him a good fight, but in the second half of the fight, he literally just starts walking away from Luke Campbell and drops him in the 11th. Probably would have dropped him again in the 12th if he didn't take him down with a double leg like he was Chad Mendez or Rashad Evans or somebody. So it was, I don't know, man. I agree, but I also think that it doesn't necessarily say he's very beatable. I just think that definitely people are in the lab. They're in the lab. You said, might I add that Loma at times has bad feet? Not often, but it happens. That's why he has been dropped more times in a few fights than most um, all-time greats do in a career. Dropped more than most all-time greats? I don't know, man. I mean, if I think about all-time greats, right? Obviously, Floyd's only been down the one time, and it wasn't really a real knockdown, but he's been hurt. DeMarcus Chop Chop Corley, Shane Mosley, Renee Maidana. He's Floyd's a different guy with that. De La Hoya wasn't dropped a lot. Oh man, we know Manny's been dropped a few. He's been dropped multiple times, been knocked out twice. If you think the only time Manny's been knocked out is Marquez, you got to go back, check him on BoxRec and flip through all the way to the beginning. He was knocked out cold earlier in his career. Ali was dropped and hurt by George Cooper, I believe it was. He was also dropped by Joe Frazier, hurt badly by Ken Norton, had his jaw broke. Didn't drop because his chin has just been ridiculous. So I don't know. I think every fighter, especially when you consistently fight top fighters, you're going to get dropped or you're going to get hurt to a point where you were nearly dropped. I just think that if you fight long enough, you fight the right type of people, ultimately it happens. Pernell Whitaker's a freak of nature. So I hear you, but we're talking about if he's not the best defensive fighter of all time, he's in top 2, top 3 with Floyd and I always mispronounce the Italian all-time great from the 70s, early 80s. I was like Nicolos. I'm gonna butcher the last name, but I used to watch him all the time. I used to watch clips of him all the time because defensive fighters just fascinate me. But yes, I don't know. Yeah, you're right. He does pivot a lot. I haven't seen him caught with that a ton. The fight when he got dropped by Linares, he wasn't pivoting. He came in and he was trying to close distance, and as he was trying to close distance, he got caught being too still in not throwing a jab or not throwing a right. So his hands are up, and it's like he's about to throw the jab, but he doesn't throw it. And Linares shot the straight right, straight through. Bang. I didn't see that he was. I'd have to watch it back, but I don't think he was pivoting. Willie Pep for sure, Pastrano for sure. But those guys are, to me, like, these are the greatest defensive fighters of all time. So for Pernell to not have been buzzed, I mean, that's like, I mean, that's different. I mean, he, as far as defensive fighters go, I'm telling you, if the people that I've had an opportunity to watch fight live, fight live, not tape, Pernell Whitaker and Floyd Mayweather are the hardest guys to hit flush. And I feel that Pernell has Mayweather edged just a bit in that category. But yeah, I'm gonna look back at it, Tobias. I'm gonna look back at it to see whether or not what's going on with the feet. Because from my recollection, it didn't look like he got caught mid pivot. I'd have to say I see it, but I don't see the feet. I see the face, and I see him on the seat of his pants. But I can't say for sure, right? But man, I love talking boxing, man. I can sit up literally, y'all, and I can talk boxing for forever, right? I just it's my thing. I mean MMA too. It's just kind of where I am. Get an opportunity, thankfully, to cover the sport, both boxing and MMA on Forbes. Myself and fellow fight guy who couldn't be with me today, Peter Kahn. This is our thing. Peter Kahn's a manager within the boxing space. He manages George Kambosos Jr. He manages Dennis Hogan. He manages Chris Van Eerden. He manages Andy Vinces. He also manages the youngest guy ever signed to Top Rank Boxing. Hasn't had his first professional fight yet, Xander Zayas. He also manages Ryan Martin. He has a crazy. Also manages Emmanuel Tago, who is a top 5 rated. Him and George Kambosos Jr. are top 5 rated guys at 130. So he has a nice growing stable of fighters. He's also managed 15 world champions in his career. First world champion he ever managed was Robert Garcia, brother of Mikey Garcia. So he's got some skin in the game for sure. KH says Loma has only been knocked down 2 times in over 420 fights. Clearly, he hasn't been down much. That's kind of how I feel. I don't feel like he's been caught pivoting. I feel like he's a pretty tough guy to really catch. Here's the thing. When you can remember how many times an active fighter, I'm talking about an active guy, a guy who fights 2-3 times a year. When you can remember how many times a guy has been dropped or caught flush or dazed, you know you're talking about a guy who is doing a pretty freaking good job on the defensive side. I think I mean, because think about it, like I can tell you like how many times Floyd's been hurt. Like I can tell you because I remember him. You know, I'm like that with Lomachenko. I can literally tell you, yeah, he only got touched this time. You know, and if you also think against Linares, he wasn't even 100% and still came back after getting dropped and knocked. The dude's different, man. The dude's different. The dude is different. You know, yeah, KH. I was just saying a little bit before, maybe before you commented. Floyd's been hurt by DeMarcus Chop Corley. He got hurt by Shane Mosley, and he got hurt by Maidana. He got hit good by Pacquiao, but I wouldn't say he was hurt, but he got hit pretty good. Zab Judah landed some solid shots on him, but I wouldn't say he was hurt. He was hurt against Maidana. He was hurt against Mosley, and he was hurt against DeMarcus Chop Corley. That was early in his career. Only 3 times he's ever been hurt. You know, at least visibly hurt. Because that Maidana shot that he took, if that shot had happened at a different point in the round, I don't know what would have happened after that, especially if you consider Floyd's age at the time and all of that. You know, it was interesting. But this has been a blast, guys. I appreciate everybody who came in and watched and checked it out. Like you said, please hit the like button. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. We try to come with one of these reaction shows. Usually my man Peter will be with me as we recap the fight. Like I said, I appreciate y'all coming through as usual. Be on the lookout for more content throughout the week on the things that are going on in boxing, and also come back to check us out at 9 p.m. Eastern time on Wednesday for Fight Guys Weekly. We'll be talking a little bit more about this fight. We'll also be talking about Tyson Fury Otto Wallin, which is coming up on Saturday. As usual, God bless and peace.